Going to have a look at flexbox. Flexbox is a CSS layout module with a set of properties that help us to arrange HTML elements in 2D space. I've set up a code pen here with a number of different elements in it to demonstrate how we can arrange them in various ways using the flexbox approach. Let me just run through the HTML and the CSS that I've written for this example. Firstly, and I'll just bring down my HTML. It's very simple HTML. We've got a div which we've given the class of big box, and that is the red box that you can see around the edge there. So that's big box there, and inside big box we've got a series of small boxes with the class of small box. So item 1, item 2, item 3 and item 4. We've given two classes to this div here, small box, and then to individualize them they've got, each of the small boxes has a different class, which is, I've just used a color name. And inside each of those items is just a bit of text, which you can see here. Item 1, item 2, item 3. Okay, so that's the HTML. The CSS, I provided a font. Didn't really need to do that. Some very basic styling on all of the HTML elements. This little star refers to every HTML element in the page. So I've reset all the margin, padding, and the box sizing I've set to border box. And that kind of flattens out any box model problems that we have in Chrome and other browsers. Anyway, we call that a reset. To the body tag, I've assigned the font that we've installed, and then I've got a series of classes. Not too many classes. I've got some style rules for the big box class. Okay, so I've set it to have a border of 10 pixels, red and solid. You can see that there. And I've set it to a height of 100 VH. So that's an interesting increment. VH stands for viewport height. So we can have a height of 50 viewport height, which would mean that the height of big box would be 50% of this space here, this horizontal space. Set that back to 100. So that's very helpful increment when we're targeting different kinds of screens. Then small box is a class. Okay, we've assigned this class of small box to all of these four elements here, div elements, and that's just adding some padding and some margin and setting the color of the text to white. And then I've made a separate class for each four of these items here. One for green, which gives it a background color of green, one for blue, orange, purple, and so on and so forth. So that's our HTML, and that gives us this box setup here. Now let's look at how we can implement flexbox to arrange these boxes in different ways. Up until now we've been looking at things that stack directly on top of each other, because that just seems to be the way that the HTML flows, which is good for kind of mobile layouts, but maybe not so good for all layouts, particularly like a wide screen. If you want to have a wide screen experience, you might need to stack items horizontally rather than vertically. Anyway, so let's do that. And we're going to do that using flexbox. So flexbox can be implemented by changing the display property of a HTML element. And we're going to change the display property of big box. So I'm going to write display, and I'm going to call flex. And instantly we can see a change. We can instantly see that all of the elements inside of big box, this is big box here, and big box is denoted by that red border, all of those elements now sit next to each other rather than on top of each other. So you can see that just by changing that display property to flex, we can really quickly start to implement page layout. When we implement the display property of flex, what we're creating is two things. We're creating what we call the flex container, okay? And the flex container in this case is the element big box here. So this div here is the flex container, and we're targeting the flex container with this rule, with this style rule here called big box. And inside the flex container, we create, by implementing display flex items. So all of these elements inside the flex container, i.e. these divs here, become the flex items. So we've got the flex container and flex items. And when we've called display flex on a flex container, all of the items inside that flex container can be arranged in various different ways. We can add further style rules to alter the way flex displays. And I'll go through a few of them here. You'll find in the Canvas module that there's links to resources that expand on this list of properties in a much more detailed kind of way. So refer back to Canvas for further details. Anyway, one thing that we can implement is something called flex direction. And flex direction has a number of different values that you can assign to it. By default, the flex direction is row, but we can, and so if I add row, nothing happens. But if I add row reverse, it reverses that flow of items. So it's flipped them around. What other values can we put in here? We can change the flex direction to what they call column, which is not intuitive, but flex direction column stacks the items on top of each other again, creating one column, I suppose. And we can do column reverse. You can see that those items are now flipped upside down, and they work, they sit on the baseline of our flex container. So that's flex direction. Something else we can implement is flex wrap. So flex wrap will come into play when there's not enough room for our boxes to exist in. So currently, when we go smaller, our items that are in the flex container kind of pop outside of the box when there's not enough space there. But we can add some flex wrap and call wrap, and it will wrap those items on top of each other so that when there's less space, they kind of jump down into a different row. So you can see that would be good for responsive design or designing for multiple screens. Here's your widescreen layout. Here's your tablet screen layout. And here is your mobile layout. So that's flex wrap. You can flex wrap reverse, which will flip them the other way when they wrap, which is kind of interesting. I'm just going to leave flex wrap on there. So whenever the flex container is too small, they're going to sit on top of each other. What else can I implement? Justify content. So this is quite a good one. I don't need a cap there. Justify content. Some values that we can add in there: flex start, flex end, center, space between, space around, and space evenly. So by default, justify content is set to flex start. So if I go flex start, nothing happens, I think. All right, but if I go flex end, flex content, flex end, it will justify it to the other side of the box. And then center will center it in the box. So you can see that we're definitely going to have some more flexibility with our layouts using flexbox. Other justify content values: space between, spaces out our flex items, space between, space around, or space and around and space evenly do similar kinds of things. You can experiment with those. So you can see now there's an even amount of space between each of those elements.